Let's look at helping clients overcome fears. Many times when you work with clients, they're going to have a lot of fears. In fact, they're even going to have a fear that what they're doing with you may not work out. They're going to have a fear that they're actually spending money that's not going to pay off. So keep that in mind and do your best to calm them down about that fear. And the best way to do that is by showing them results as soon as possible. One of the fears that they're going to have is the fear of failure. They're going to potentially have tried what you're going to work with them on for some time. And perhaps it hasn't worked out, and that's why they've called you in. Because after all, as I've said, if they could do it themselves, they wouldn't have you there. It doesn't make any sense to hire a life coach if you can do everything yourself. They have you there because it hasn't worked out. So sometimes they're starting something new, in which case there can be the fear of something new. They've never tried it. They don't know if it's going to work out. They're afraid of it. And sometimes they can have the fear that they're going to fail again. They can have tried it and maybe it didn't work out, and they've tried it again, and finally they say, I need help. They call you up, they find you on the internet, they call you up, and they say, hey, come here, help me out. What's going to be present for them is a fear of failure. Not in every case. I don't want you to start the idea that every client you work with is afraid of failing, because that's not true. But many times it is true. And this is one of the most difficult things for clients to admit. So I suggest not confronting them on this unless they're open to talking about it. It doesn't really do any good to say, hey, you have a fear of failure. What good does that do? Sometimes giving something a label can have power. So if you have rapport with them and you feel that it will help, go ahead and go for it. But many times it really doesn't matter. You say they have a fear of failure. Well, so what? That's not a solution. That's just pointing out a problem. If you say that the carpet has stuff on it, that's pointing out a problem or a challenge. Better way to say that is, why don't we do something about the carpet having stuff on it? Or have you ever thought about the different ways that you can resolve the challenge of the carpet having stuff on it? And really, it's just a matter of getting out a vacuum cleaner and vacuuming. So in that simple scenario, it's easy, but you understand my point. Focusing on the solution is where you want to be. So even if they have a fear of failure, pointing it out isn't necessarily going to be the way to go. But keep in mind, this is a very common situation. So one of the things you'll be called upon to do, directly or indirectly, is to help your clients overcome fear of failure. What about fear of success? Now, isn't this an interesting one? We talk more and more about it in self-help circles over the past 20 years or so. The fear of success, I've noticed it becoming more and more popular. But isn't it interesting that someone can have a fear of success? And sometimes the people who have a fear of success are the people who are trying the hardest. I mean, really going for it. And when I say trying, I mean to use that word. Remember, trying kind of sets you up for failure sometimes. But they're trying. They're trying to look busy. They're trying to convince themselves, to fool themselves, that they're actually working towards something, when they know all along in their subconscious minds, may not be consciously present for them, but in the back of their minds they know, in their subconscious minds they know that it's not going to work out because they don't feel worthy. They have a fear of success. And that's where fear of success often stems from, a feeling of unworthiness. They're afraid of what would happen. Sometimes it's just because they don't want the added aggravation. They're actually afraid of becoming famous or becoming well-known or doing something the right way. Because what happens? What happened after the Beatles made their first album? Everybody said, what's next? Where's number 2? And if they had been afraid of success, well, they probably would have shied away from album number 1 because of not wanting all of the things that come along with success. So sometimes your clients are actually afraid of that. Now, they may not be on the verge of becoming famous like the Beatles, but maybe if they do the project the right way for once, they'll be given more work to do. And they're actually afraid of that. They're thinking, if I just keep my head low, then I'll be okay. As long as I'm just getting by, I'll be okay. On the other hand, they're hiring you, and they're looking like they're working toward becoming successful. So keep this in mind. Sometimes clients work against themselves. It's not because they're bad people. It's not because they don't have any sense. It's oftentimes because of something in their subconscious minds that's telling them, you really don't want this. You really don't want to be this successful, because it's going to mean some kind of pain somewhere along the line. So keep in mind that many times your clients will be sabotaging your efforts and their own efforts. And you're going to see this. They're going to miss meetings. They're going to show up late for things. They're going to, quote unquote, forget to do certain things that they need to do in order to become successful. Why? Because their subconscious mind is in control. So be aware of this. What about fear of rejection? Clients have a fear of rejection, just like everyone else from time to time has. And the most prevalent example of this would be in the dating world. Not that you will be a dating coach per se, but you never know. Some clients may hire you for that. But it's easy to take stories from there that can serve metaphorically as examples of you working with your clients in business or whatever they're working on. People will fail to do certain things in dating because they don't want to be rejected. Maybe they've been rejected before, failing to see that each new situation is a new opportunity, completely new. The only thing that's the same about it is the attitude they're bringing into it. When someone brings the same attitude into anything, dating situation, business, getting a new job, anything at all, what tends to happen? They tend to reproduce the same results. The results they had before, they tend to reproduce again. And it tends to be a cycle with them. It tends to go on and on. And I've seen this in clients many times, with clients I work with in hypnotherapy. They'll come to me one year and they've just found their soulmate, for example. They just found the love of their life, their soulmate. And the next year, they've just found their soulmate. They've come back to me again for something else. But we start talking about that and they found their soulmate. It's a different person. This is a cycle for them. So people tend to get in cycles when they bring the same thing into each new scenario. And they tend to repeat things that don't work because they really do work. There's some payoff for them. In messing things up, there's actually a payoff for them. So when people are afraid of rejection many times in business or dating or what have you, they tend to mess it up. It's your job to keep your eyes open and notice when this is happening. You're going to notice patterns. You're going to hear excuses sometimes from your clients. Oh, I was late. Oh, I couldn't do it. It was impossible. I had so much going on. Oh, really? They had so much going on? Why couldn't that have been going on? So you've got to ask yourself logical questions when you hear things that are excuses, because things that are excuses are really not going to benefit the client. Depending on how much rapport you have with them, you can either call them on it directly. Some clients love that. Or if they're not really into that, then you can take some other sort of corrective action. As we've talked about, setting alarms earlier for them or telling them their meetings start earlier than they actually do so they'll get there on time. So you can work for them while they're working against themselves. What about procrastination? Well, procrastination is something that is not necessarily a fear, but I put it in this category because when you are afraid of something, procrastination can creep into any of these areas. When you have a fear of failure, you can procrastinate to the point where you're no longer eligible to do that. Let's say someone's afraid they're going to fail the entrance exam to medical school. So they just put off taking the exam, the MCAT. They put it off, put it off. They procrastinate. Oh, eventually the due dates pass for the signing up for the test, and they're not able to do it. They can do it next time, but they missed this one. Oh, well, guess I'll do something else. So procrastination can come in and offer a really nice excuse. Hey, I missed it. I missed the cutoff date. I missed the time I was supposed to do it. And that could happen for anything. Procrastination can creep in and serve as a wonderful excuse. So look for procrastination with your clients? What about fear of success? It can affect this because fear of success means that you don't want it to work out. So whether they're afraid they're going to fail or afraid they're going to succeed, hey, I become a medical doctor, suddenly all these sick people will be coming to me. I don't really want that. That's their subconscious dialogue that they may not be aware of. So procrastination can come into play. Maybe they get into medical school and they start showing up to places late or not doing things they're supposed to do on time. They can undo it. Fear of rejection. You can put off things. Let's say that you are afraid that your proposal is going to be rejected. You're working with someone who's working on a company merger, and they've got to come up with a proposal. It's your job as a life coach to help them get their act together and get a proposal together, do all the things they need to do, but they put it off. Why? They're afraid of being rejected. Why are they afraid of being rejected? Because it is painful for them. That's what all of these things are about. They're about pain. Your clients' minds are programmed to avoid pain. What they don't realize is that pain sometimes equals progress. I heard recently a phrase which I hope becomes more popular, and it was something along the lines of fail faster, something along those lines. Fail faster, or fail harder, I think it was. The whole idea of failing used to be something that I avoided completely until I realized that salespeople have to fail many times. They have to get a lot of no's, no, before they get a yes. People who make proposals for things have to fail many times before they get a yes. And if you fail faster, you're getting through all of those no's and getting to the yes. Failure is part of success. So I think it's a wonderful phrase. Fail faster. Get it over with faster. Go through it. You're actually planning on failing, but not really. That's not really your goal. Your goal is success. But you're accepting the fact that failures are going to happen. And this gives you a lot of power. You've already planned for failure, and you know it's part of the success. Let's talk about confronting challenges. Confronting challenges. Now, frustration is going to happen. Your clients are going to come up against frustration. They're going to be frustrated with you. They're going to be frustrated with themselves. They're going to be frustrated with the process. They're going to be frustrated with their spouses, their lives. They're going to be frustrated with everything. And you're going to be frustrated with everything at certain points. Confronting the challenge of frustration can be a little bit of a task, can be a little daunting. First of all, if your client is one of those people who's constantly frustrated, you may want to recommend some sort of Zen meditation or hypnosis or something that's going to calm them down. But if they're the type of people who have a little bit of frustration every now and then, and that frustration is actually standing in their way of success, and it's just a little bit, occasionally, then what you can do is work on that, is address that. Maybe not directly. Maybe you don't want to directly address it and say, hey, I've noticed you're frustrated. Oh, yeah? Well, now I'm frustrated at you for mentioning that I'm frustrated. So it may not always work out to your advantage, but you can at least build it into a plan. You can at least work it into a plan to deal with their frustration, or better yet, have them deal with it. Because one of the challenges that they're going to face is frustration. What happens when we get frustrated? When we're doing something and we get frustrated? It's not a resourceful state. It's not something that you can use. It's not like happiness or motivation or confidence. It's something that causes us to mess up. It's something that causes us to have anxiety. It's something that causes us to paint outside of the lines when we're trying to paint within the lines. We're trying to do something right, trying to get it done on time, and we're frustrated. We start getting sloppy, don't we? We start doing things that we shouldn't do in terms of things that don't contribute to finishing the task. We tend to get very sloppy with our work when we're frustrated. Maybe your client goes so far as to start throwing things. Who knows? But frustration is a highly unresourceful state, and it's going to be a challenge that comes up. And I want to tell you that frustration is actually a positive thing when used to their advantage, but you want to have them have a way to deal with it. Great way is a punching bag or a gym membership or yoga or meditation or hypnosis or something that's going to help them deal with that challenge. What about hesitation? Hesitation. Now, hesitation is related to procrastination, but hesitation is more in the moment. When we hesitate, what I mean by that is it's more in the moment. Procrastination means you've got a deadline for something that's a month from now. You've got to get some plane tickets to go somewhere to a business meeting. It's a month from now, and you put it off until the prices are so high that you have an excuse. I just won't go. And really what's happening is you're afraid that the meeting won't work out, and that's played itself out through your procrastination. Hesitation, the way I define it, is something in the moment. I'm just about to do this. I'm just about to approach that person who's actually going to help me in my career. Let's say your client is in that position. They're just about to do something that's really going to help them out. It's going to help them tremendously in what they're doing. But when it comes time to do it, in that key clutch moment, they hesitate. What happens when we hesitate when there's opportunity? There's an old saying that goes something like this. Hesitation, you need to grab when it's coming toward you, or rather, opportunity you need to grab when it's coming toward you because it's bald in the back. It's a bald head. In other words, when it already passes you, you can't reach out and grab it. There's nothing to grab onto. It's bald in the back. You're going to be grabbing onto nothing. It's going to pass you by. So when it's coming toward you, an opportunity is coming toward you, you need to grab it. You need to take advantage of it. That's when it's there. If you hesitate, even for a few seconds sometimes, it's gone. It's passed by. And it may never come back again. You can try to run and get in front of it and say, hey, wait a minute, opportunity, come back. Well, you know what happens when that happens. You start doing a lot of work for very little payoff. When the opportunity's there, you need to grab it. Hesitation, sometimes even for a few seconds, can cause opportunity to be gone forever. When opportunity's gone forever, there's nothing you can do about it. It's just gone. So, when you see opportunity, you need to grab it, and you need to teach this to your clients too. One of the things that's going to be contributing to this is their sabotage pattern, which of course is based on their fears. Fears of not being worthy, fears of being asked to do more, create the second album, or what have you. So, when you work on that, hesitation gets cleared up. But you should also work with your clients on rapid decision making. Rapid decision making allows them to make decisions rapidly when they do see an opportunity. Some opportunities are open for a long time, in which procrastination might kick in. Some are open for a few moments or a day, in which hesitation might kick in. So you'll always want to work with them and confront these challenges. If you see them hesitating, and again and again and again, and missing this and missing that, missing the next thing, realizing opportunities bald in the back, then you want to work with them on that, on going for it. Part of that is building up their confidence. Also, you want to work on the challenge of confusion. Sometimes they're just confused. And this is not something that's necessarily going to clear up. When someone's confused, they're just confused. And there's really not a powerful remedy for it, for getting someone to not be confused in a certain moment. Confusion just happens. Unlike frustration and hesitation, it's a little bit more of a challenge to come up with a way to head off confusion. Confusion just happens. But confusion can lead to hesitation and frustration. So it is a valid challenge. You want to work with them on pushing through their confusion. What are the techniques they use when they're in a confused state? Do they just say, oh, forget it. I just won't go through with this idea at all. I knew it wasn't a good idea, and this is really my excuse to get out of this idea, so I don't understand it anyway. I'm going to get out. Is that what they do? If that's what they're doing, then they're coming up with a series of really convenient excuses. And sometimes they can be untrue to themselves and say that they don't understand it just because they don't want to research a little further. Just because turning to page 2 might clear it up, but they don't want to do that. They want an excuse. So when you see it as an excuse, then you need to confront this in some way. You also need, as I said, to have in place for them a way to deal with confusion. What is the strategy used? Do they seek outside advice? Do they start calling in experts? Remember, although you're the life coach, you're not the legal expert unless you otherwise have legal training. You're not the health expert unless you otherwise have health training. You're not the financial expert unless you otherwise have financial training. But you, from time to time, will have to call in experts for them. Remember, you're never expected to be the expert in any category. You can study things and learn about them, but some things are going to require an expert, someone who has a college degree in it and who has been licensed in that particular state to practice in that specialty. And that's just the way it is. Sometimes you're going to have to call in that specialist, the attorney, the medical doctor, the accountant, CPA, whoever. So they need to have a way of coping with and pushing through confusion, because enough confusing situations over time can really stifle a company or an individual. If they get confused about enough things, then they're really not going to go anywhere. They're not going to be able to push through to the next level. If that continues happening, then what happens is they end up going in circles. They never really understand anything, and they don't get anywhere. So help them confront that challenge. Now let's talk specifically about confronting frustration. When a client hits a dead end, I want you to ask, what can you do differently to get a new and better result? That's a very powerful question. So the client has perhaps become confused, perhaps hesitated, who knows? But they're frustrated. They're frustrated. They don't really know what to do. And in this scenario, I've gone a little further and said they've hit a dead end. Now it's in quotation marks, dead end, because there really is no dead end. But they feel that that's where they are. They need to do something differently. There needs to be a different choice. Think about a rat in a maze. The rat may go through the maze every time and wind up in the same place every time. And if that's not where the rat wants to go, what does it need to do? Something different. Something different. Rats understand this. They understand that they need to make different choices. We can see this in a laboratory. Well, humans do too. But sometimes, because of frustration, we tend to get a little off track. We tend to lose faith. We tend to say, forget it. Because unlike the rat, we can step right out of that maze. We can say, no thanks, maze, I'm leaving. And if we do that, then we miss out on tremendous opportunity. So rather than allowing your clients to do that, how about asking them, what can you do differently to get a new and better result? So realize we're not just after a new result. We're after a new and better result. And also realize that the next result may also be a dead end. And I want you to get your clients okay with that, because it's not as if they're going to try something one time or work toward achieving something one time and fail, and work toward achieving it again and get it. It doesn't always work that way. Just because you tried it again does not mean the universe owes you anything. Doesn't mean the universe owes your client anything. It doesn't mean it's going to work. Sometimes you have to try 100 times. Sometimes you have to focus on a new result or focus on a different approach to that same result 100 times. And look at the story of Thomas Edison working on the light bulb. As the story goes, I believe he tried 1,000 different combinations before something actually lit up and he became world famous and forever known. That's the way the story goes. Sometimes you need to try a lot of different things. It's a maze. You need to figure it out. You need to get your clients comfortable with a certain level of frustration and get them comfortable with pushing through, trying different ways. I want you to encourage them to think outside the box. Now, I know this has become a little cliche. Think outside the box. Everyone says that, to the point at which when people say that, I almost think that they're not thinking outside the box because everyone says that. But for lack of a better expression, you really do need to get your clients to think differently. That means taking themselves out of the immediate situation, zooming out, getting a global perspective of what's going on. Sometimes you can just have them visualize this. Visualize zooming out from their office, zooming out from their state, zooming out from their country, and just looking at it. Imagine looking at it, the challenge, from a great distance. Once you do that, you're going to realize that, first of all, the challenge is really small. It's not really as big as everyone thought it was. Second of all, you're going to potentially see different alternatives. You know, one of the great tricks that works with this is getting your clients to read different magazines. Bill Gates reads a variety of magazines, things he's not even interested in. He reads them to keep his mind fresh because he is actually interested in a lot of things, but not every magazine he has a subscription to is something that he's really, really into. But it keeps his mind fresh. He also takes online courses. He takes them so that he can keep his mind fresh. Now, what does this do? Let's say you get a magazine about basket weaving and you're a physicist. Is that really going to help? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe you'll see something in there that's so out of the ordinary from what you would normally study or normally read about that you see a new way of looking at what you've been looking at. We can get so caught up in working on a solution. We can get so focused on it that we get blinders on. We fail to see other alternatives. We fail to look at things from other points of view. We get so caught up in the tools and techniques that we have that we ignore everything else. So when you think outside the box, you think outside of your immediate situation. You think in ways that you normally wouldn't, ways that you normally dismiss, and you think in ways that you never even thought about thinking about. If you get a book on or a magazine on basket weaving, you start reading it, you've never been into basket weaving, I guarantee you're going to see some ideas in there that are new to you, ideas that you hadn't thought about. You'll also probably gain an appreciation for some of the art and science behind it. The point is that if you have a client who feels stuck, they need to start thinking differently. So having them do different things, read different things, these kinds of tricks are really not tricks at all. They're just part of expanding the mind. Have them start taking piano lessons or art classes. These things free up their thinking and give them new distinctions. And this allows them to come back and confront that frustration, which is going to happen anyway, confront it in a new way and actually push through it and make those new powerful choices.